Dr. Kim Hannah pressed her palm against the cold metal wall of the research ship and closed her eyes. The vibrations from the engines felt wrong somehow, as if the universe itself was trying to forget that the ship existed. When she opened her eyes again, the holographic star map still showed the same impossible truth where Earth should have been. There was only empty space. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of computers and the occasional beep from monitoring systems. Lee Min-ho sat hunched over his workstation, his fingers moving quickly across the glowing controls. Every few seconds, he would stop and shake his head as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "Another one," Min-ho said without looking up. "The Centauri archives just updated their historical records. The human settlement on Proxima b never existed according to them. They're saying it was always a Zephyrian mining colony." Anna walked over to look at his screen. The official records showed detailed reports of blue-skinned aliens working the mines for over 2 centuries. But she remembered the human families who had lived there, children who had been born under the red light of Proxima Centauri. She remembered visiting the colony herself just 5 years ago. "The graves don't lie," came Park Ji-ho's voice through the communication system. He was still down on the planet's surface, digging through the red dirt of what had once been New Sol. "I found toys, Hannah. Human toys. Little plastic robots and dolls with human faces. But every database in the galaxy says no human ever set foot on this world." Hannah touched the communication panel. "How many bodies have you found? 3,000 so far? Maybe more?" "They're buried in rows, the way humans always buried their dead, with flowers and personal items. But the official records say this planet was empty until the Cryarian Empire claimed it 50 years ago." The ship's AI spoke up in its calm, mechanical voice. "Dr. Kim, I must report that crew member anxiety levels are reaching dangerous levels. Several crew members are requesting medical attention for severe nightmares." Hannah knew about the nightmares. She had them too. In her dreams, she saw massive shapes moving through space, invisible hands reaching into the minds of every living being in the galaxy. The hands would carefully remove certain memories, filing them away somewhere humans couldn't reach. In the dreams, she could see her own memories being pulled out of her head like books from a shelf. "It's getting worse," said Dr. Park Sumi, their ship's doctor, as she entered the bridge. Her usually neat hair was messy, and there were dark circles under her eyes. Half the crew didn't sleep last night. They were all having the same dream about something hunting through their memories. Min-ho turned around in his chair. "It's not just our crew. I've been monitoring communications from the other survivor ships. They're all reporting the same thing. Something is actively trying to make us forget ourselves." The truth was becoming clear to all of them, even though it seemed impossible. Humanity hadn't just been defeated in some great war. It hadn't been wiped out by disease or disaster. Something had reached back through time itself and carefully removed every trace of human existence from the galaxy's memory. "But why can we still remember?" asked Sumi. "If they're so powerful, why do we still know who we are?" Hannah had been thinking about that question for weeks. Maybe some humans are harder to erase than others. Maybe our brains work differently than they expected. On the main screen, Ji-ho's image appeared. His environmental suit was covered in dust, and he looked tired. Behind him, she could see rows of grave markers stretching into the distance. "I found something else," he said. "A message carved into a rock. It says we were here. We existed. Don't let them make you forget." The message had been carved in Korean, Chinese, English, Spanish, and a dozen other human languages. Someone had spent a lot of time making sure it would be found. "They fought back," Hannah whispered. "Even as they were being erased, they tried to leave proof." Min-ho pulled up a new display showing the locations of all the hidden human settlements they had found. The pattern was clear now. Humans had been scattered across hundreds of worlds, living in small groups, hiding from something that hunted memories instead of bodies. 12,000 of us left," Hannah said, looking at the numbers on her screen. 12,000 humans in a galaxy that insists we never existed. "What do we do now?" Sumi asked. Hannah looked at the faces of her crew, saw the fear and confusion in their eyes. But she also saw something else's determination. Humans had always been stubborn. They had always refused to give up, even when the odds were impossible. "We remember," she said firmly. "We remember everything. And then we make sure the galaxy remembers too." Outside the ship, Stars burned in patterns that no longer included Earth in their ancient light. But inside the ship, 12,000 humans prepared to fight a war unlike any other war for the right to exist in the universe's memory. The battle for humanity's place in history was about to begin. The old mining station spun slowly in the darkness between galaxies, its metal walls scarred by decades of asteroid impacts. Inside the main meeting room, 50 of humanity's last survivors sat in uncomfortable silence as Chosumi prepared to share what she had discovered. Sumi's hand shook slightly as she activated the holographic projector. She had spent 3 months digging through data that existed in ways her human brain could barely understand. The information she had found would change everything they thought they knew about their situation. "I found them," she said simply. "The ones who erased us." The hologram flickered to life in the center of the room. Strange shapes appeared, constantly changing and shifting. Sometimes they looked like geometric patterns, sometimes like mathematical equations come to life. They moved in ways that hurt to watch, as if they existed in more dimensions than human eyes could process. "They call themselves the Archivists," Sumi continued, her voice steady despite her obvious exhaustion. "They're older than most galaxies. They don't live in normal space and time like we do. They exist partially outside of reality itself." Captain Yunde leaned forward in his chair. The deep scars on his left cheek were a reminder of the desperate battle to evacuate Earth 15 years ago, when the strange attacks had first begun. "What do they want? They think they're gardeners?" Sumi replied, changing the hologram to show images of civilizations across the galaxy. "They watch species develop, and when they decide a species is too dangerous or too chaotic, they remove them from history. Not just kill them, they make it so they never existed at all." Dr. Ohan, their brain specialist, stood up quickly. "That's impossible. You can't change the past." "They don't change it," Sumi explained. "They edit it, like deleting words from a book. They go back through time and carefully remove all the connections a species made with others, erase the friendships, the trade agreements, the wars, the shared discoveries. Eventually, it's as if that species never existed." Young Bei Temin raised his hand nervously. At 19, he was one of the youngest survivors, having escaped Earth as a small child. Why us? What made humans special enough to erase? The question everyone had been thinking hung in the air. Sumi changed the hologram again, showing charts and graphs that tracked human development over thousands of years. "We were unpredictable," she said. "The archivists can look at most species and predict exactly how they'll develop over millions of years. But humans always surprise them. We made friends with species we should have fought. We survived disasters that should have killed. We invented things that shouldn't have been possible." Captain Yoon laughed bitterly. "So they erased us because we were too creative." "Because we were chaos," Sumi corrected. "In their perfect, ordered universe, humans were like a computer virus. We disrupted their careful plans just by existing." Dr. Hoon had been studying brain scans of the survivors for months, trying to understand why some humans could still remember their erased history while others couldn't. "But their plan didn't work perfectly," she said. "Some of us remember everything. Our brains seem to be naturally resistant to their memory editing." "How is that possible?" asked Lee Minho from the back of the room. Dr. Han activated her own holographic display showing complex brain scans. Human brains developed in ways that seemed to include natural quantum entanglement patterns. When the archivists try to delete our memories, part of our consciousness exists in quantum states they can't reach. The room buzzed with quiet conversations as people tried to understand what this meant. Hannah stood up slowly, her mind racing with the implications. "We're paradoxes," she said. "We exist in a universe that insists we never did. We remember things that officially never happened." Sumi nodded grimly. "And it's getting worse for the archivists. The harder they try to erase us, the more we remember. Our memories are starting to leak back into other species. I've been monitoring alien communication networks. Other species are starting to have dreams about humans." "Dreams?" Captain Yoon asked. "Fragments of memory," Dr. Haon explained. "An alien trader suddenly remembering a human friend they never had. A scientist remembering a collaboration that never happened. The universe itself is trying to remember us, despite the editing." The implications were staggering. If other species were starting to remember humans, then the archivist's perfect erasure was beginning to fail. Humanity wasn't just surviving, they were fighting back without even knowing it.
Right. What do we do with this information?
Asked Commander Park Soman, one of their few remaining military officers. Captain Yoon stood up, his decision already forming in his mind. We stop hiding, he said firmly. If the universe wants to remember us, then we give it something worth remembering. The meeting continued for hours as they planned their next move. Outside the station, space was dark and empty. But inside, 50 humans prepared to wage war against beings that existed beyond normal reality, a war for the right to exist in the memory of the universe itself. For the first time in 15 years, humanity was ready to fight back. The message traveled through space in ways that shouldn't have been possible. It used frequencies that the archivists had tried to remove from the universe itself. Hidden in the spaces between quantum particles, Dr. Kim Hanna watched from the observation deck of their hidden station as the first response came. A massive shape appeared near what used to be Jupiter, shimmering as it dropped its invisibility shields. The generation ship Endurance was huge, easily 5 kilometers long, its hull scarred by decades of hiding in the outer darkness of space. Lights flickered along its sides as docking bays opened. This is Captain Namsora of the Terran vessel. Endurance, came a woman's voice over the communication system. Her words carried 15 years of loneliness and hope. We've been waiting for this day. Hannah felt tears in her eyes. 8,000 humans lived on that ship, an entire floating city that had been hiding behind the broken pieces of Europa. Since the Great Erasure began, children had been born on that ship who had never breathed real air or felt sunlight on their faces. Within hours, more ships appeared. Small vessels, hidden bases, and underground colonies all responded to the signal. From the tunnels beneath Proxima Centauri came Dr. Kang Juan and his people, blinking in the artificial light after decades of living like moles. They had learned to hide their thoughts so well that even the memory-hunting archivists couldn't find them. We call ourselves the Tunnel Rats, Jiwan explained, as his group boarded the station. His people were pale from years underground, but their eyes burned with determination. We've been building defenses, not just physical ones, mental. Barriers that can stop the archivists from reading our minds. The strangest group arrived last. Commander Ruminji looked more like a machine than a human. With metal arms and glowing circuits visible under her transparent skin, she led what they called the cyborg collective humans who had transferred parts of their consciousness into quantum computers to keep their memories safe. We are living libraries, she announced, in a voice that sounded like music made of mathematics. Every human memory, every relationship with alien species, every moment of our history is stored in our quantum matrices. The archivists can't delete what doesn't exist in normal space. The gathering took place in the main assembly hall of their hidden station. Representatives from 47 different human groups sat together for the first time in 15 years. Some looked normal, others had been changed by years of hiding and fighting. But they were all human, and they all remembered Captain Yoon Dae stood at the front of the room, looking out at faces he hadn't seen in over a decade. We're not just survivors anymore, he said. We're the last witnesses to our own existence. In its time, the galaxy remembered what it lost. Dr. Shin Jin-ho stepped forward, carrying a small device that hummed with strange energy. We've made a breakthrough, he announced. We've learned how to turn memories into weapons. He activated the device, and suddenly everyone in the room was overwhelmed with vivid memories. Hannah gasped as she remembered her first meeting with an alien diplomat, a blue-skinned Regelian who had become her closest friend. The memory was so clear she could smell the alien flowers in his embassy office. Memory bombs, Jinho explained as the device powered down. We can force deleted memories back into alien minds. Imagine an entire species suddenly remembering the humans they used to know. Dr. Pak Yuna, their expert on alien psychology, looked worried. The shock could drive them insane. Suddenly remembering a best friend who never existed according to their history books. That's exactly what we want, Captain Yoon said grimly. The archivists tried to make our disappearance clean and simple. Instead, we're going to make it messy and complicated. Young Jin Wubin stood up near the back of the room. At 18, he was one of the youngest survivors, born after the erasure began. "I've never lived in a universe that admitted humans existed," he said, his voice carrying surprising strength. "My whole life I've been a ghost. But I don't want to haunt the galaxy. I want to wake it up." The plan they developed was ambitious, beyond anything humans had ever attempted. They would simultaneously attack memory centers across the galaxy. Not with weapons or explosives, but with nostalgia and remembrance. They would force every major species to remember their human friends, partners, and enemies all at once. "It will cause chaos," warned Commander Park Soman, one of their military leaders. "Good," replied Captain Namsora from the Generation ship. "Chaos is what we do best. It's why they erased us in the first place." The vote was quick and unanimous. Every human group agreed to participate in Operation Remembrance. They would strike in 72 hours, hitting targets across 17 star systems simultaneously. As the meeting ended and the various groups began preparing for battle, Hannah looked out at the stars through the station's main window. Somewhere out there, alien species were living their lives with gaps in their memories, spaces where humans used to be. Soon, those gaps would be filled again. The universe was about to remember humanity, whether it wanted to or not. The tiny device looked harmless as it floated through space toward Tau Ceti Prime, no bigger than a computer chip. It spun slowly as it approached the blue-green world where 12 billion amphibious beings lived in floating cities above vast oceans. Dr. Kim. Hannah watched from the bridge of the Resilience as the memory bomb reached its target. There was no explosion, no flash of light. The device simply dissolved into quantum particles that spread across the planet like invisible rain. The effect was immediate and terrible. On the planet's surface, an Aquarian merchant named Glubwhistle was examining his trade records when he suddenly remembered Ambassador Cho Min-seo. The human diplomat had been his closest friend for 5 years, helping him navigate the complex rules of interstellar commerce. They had shared meals, told jokes, and worked together to build trade routes that benefited both species. But according to every official record, humans had never existed. Glubwhistle's mind couldn't handle the contradiction. He collapsed on the floor of his office, his gills fluttering wildly as he tried to process memories of a friend who had never been real. Across the planet, millions of other Aquarians experienced the same shock as deleted memories came flooding back. "The psychic feedback is incredible," reported Dr. Songhound from her position at the communications station. "The Aquarians are sending distress calls on every frequency. They're experiencing complete mental breakdown." Similar attacks were happening across 17 star systems as humanity's hidden fleet struck simultaneously. These weren't normal weapons that destroyed buildings or killed people. These were weapons that attacked forgetting itself, forcing entire civilizations to remember what they had lost. Commander Lee Kangman's team hit the Rigel Mining Consortium next. The crystalline beings who ran the deep space mining operations suddenly remembered the human engineers who had designed their extraction systems. For decades, they had wondered why their technology worked in ways their science couldn't explain. Now they remembered the humans who had taught them quantum drilling techniques. The memory restoration caused chaos across their mining networks, as workers stopped what they were doing to process the impossible memories flooding their crystal matrix minds. But the archivists fought back quickly. Reality itself began to bend around the human ships as the cosmic entities tried to delete the concept of resistance from the universe. Captain Yunde's flagship Defiance began to flicker in and out of existence as the archivists attempted to edit it from the timeline. "Captain, we're experiencing something impossible," reported Lieutenant Park Soman from her station. Control panel was showing error messages that made no sense. "The ship is trying to exist and not exist at the same time. Our hull integrity is reading as both perfect and completely destroyed." The Defiance had become a contradictioner ship that was simultaneously real and unreal, present and absent, fighting and peaceful. The archivists were trying to delete the very idea of human resistance. But human minds proved uniquely capable of holding contradictory thoughts. Dr. Chen Sunmi made the breakthrough discovery while studying the attacks from a hidden research station. I understand now, she announced over the quantum communication network. The archivists don't actually change the past. They create competing stories about what happened and force the universe to choose which version to believe. This revelation changed everything. Instead of trying to restore one clear timeline, humanity began broadcasting contradictory memories. Simultaneously, it became the species that had never existed, but had always been present. The friends who were also strangers. The allies who were simultaneously enemies. The galaxy began to crack under the pressure of holding opposing truths. On Vega Station, the crystal-based resonance tried to process memories of century-long philosophical debates with human thinkers, while simultaneously believing humans had never existed. Their crystalline bodies began developing stress fractures. As their minds struggled with the paradox, the chaos spread faster than the archivists could contain it. Each restored memory connected to other memories, creating cascading effects that rippled through galactic civilization. An alien scientist would remember a human colleague, which would trigger memories in their friends, which would spread to their families and co-workers. The memory cascade is accelerating, reported Captain Nahum Sora from the Generation ship Endurance. The archivists are trying to contain it, but they're losing control. Every time they try to delete one memory, 3 more appear. Hana felt a fierce satisfaction as she watched the tactical displays showing the spread of remembered humanity across the galaxy. They had become a virus in the cosmic memory system, spreading through every connection they had ever made with other species. We're not just making them remember us, she announced to the human fleet. We're making them remember what it feels like to lose someone important. We're teaching the galaxy about grief. The war had become something unprecedented, a battle, fought entirely in the realm of memory and meaning. Humanity was forcing the universe to confront the pain of loss, the ache of missing something important that had been taken away. As the attacks continued, reality itself began to show signs of strain. The careful order that the archivists had maintained for millions of years was dissolving into beautiful, chaotic remembrance. The universe was learning to grieve for the first time, and the lesson was spreading to every corner of known space. The war of remembrance had truly begun. The fortress hung in a place that shouldn't exist. Built from time itself, turned solid like crystal. Dr. Kim Hana's consciousness floated through the impossible architecture. Her human mind stretched thin as it tried to understand geometry that existed in 17 dimensions at once. She was no longer truly alive in the way humans understood life. Her body remained back on the resilience, connected by quantum threads to the consciousness matrix that allowed her to navigate this space between moments. Around her, the final battle of humanity was being fought not with guns or explosives, but with pure will and memory. The archivists moved through their fortress like living mathematics, their forms shifting between equations and geometric shapes that hurt to perceive directly. They were ancient beyond human understanding, beings who had existed since the universe learned to think. For millions of years they had maintained perfect order by carefully editing reality's story. 73% of galactic civilizations now remember humans, Dr. Ohayan's voice echoed through quantum space from the dying bridge of the resilience. The ship was tearing itself apart as multiple timelines tried to exist in the same space. The memory cascade is beyond our control now. Hannah could feel the truth of those words rippling through the fabric of existence. Across the galaxy, billions of alien minds were struggling to process the sudden return of memories they had never known were missing. The careful amnesia that the archivists had maintained was crumbling like a dam made of sand. On Centauri Prime, the insectoid hive queens were experiencing collective nervous breakdowns as they remembered. Human diplomats who had helped negotiate peace between their rival colonies. The memories were so vivid that some queens were convinced the humans were still alive. Sending search parties to look for friends who had been erased from existence, the crystalline beings of Vega Station had begun forming memorial gardens for humans they remembered but couldn't find. Their crystal matrices were developing new growth patterns as they tried to preserve memories that officially couldn't exist. But the restoration was causing reality itself, too. become unstable. Recovered memory created contradictions that the universe struggled to resolve. How could species remember trading with humans if humans had never existed? How could they recall wars fought alongside people who had never been born? The barriers between possible and real are breaking down, warned Dr. Chen Sunmi from her research station. If this continues, the fundamental structure of space-time could collapse. Hannah understood the choice they faced. They could stop the memory cascade and accept their erasure, allowing the archivists to maintain their ordered universe. Or they could continue and risk destroying the very reality they were trying to rejoin. The decision came to her with crystal clarity. Humanity had always been willing to sacrifice everything for the chance to exist on their own terms. Begin the final phase. She transmitted to the scattered human forces. We're not just going to restore our place in history. We're going to become part of history itself. The plan they had developed was audacious beyond belief. Instead of trying to exist as a normal species again, humanity would encode itself directly into the structure of space-time. It would become a living memory that could never be deleted or forgotten. One by one, the remaining humans began the transformation. Captain Yunde was the first, his consciousness expanding beyond individual thought as he merged with the quantum foam that underlaid reality. His courage and determination became woven into the fundamental forces that held atoms together. Dr. Ohan followed, her curiosity and love of knowledge becoming part of the universe's drive to understand itself. The children from the generation ship Endurance became the cosmos's capacity for wonder and hope. We won't exist as people anymore, Hannah transmitted to the last few survivors preparing for the merge. But we'll exist as something more permanent. Every time an alien looks at the stars and wonders what's out there, they'll be feeling our curiosity. Every time someone refuses to give up in the face of impossible odds, they'll be channeling our stubbornness. The archivists tried to stop the transformation, but they discovered something they had never encountered before. An idea so fundamentally human that it couldn't be edited or removed. The concept of refusing to be forgotten had become too powerful. Spreading through quantum mechanics and into the basic laws of physics, as the last human consciousness merged with reality's foundation, something unprecedented happened. The universe itself learned to remember in a new way. It's not just the careful, ordered memories that the archivists had maintained, but chaotic, emotional, contradictory human memories, full of love and loss and stubborn hope. The archivists, beings of pure thought who had existed since time began, encountered their first truly impossible concept. They could edit history, delete species, and reshape reality, but they couldn't remove the idea of remembering the forgotten dot across the galaxy. Alien species felt a new sensation, the warm feeling of being remembered by friends they had thought were dreams. They would spend centuries trying to understand the gift they had been given, but they would never forget the strange, impossible sensation of being loved by ghosts. Humanity had lost the war for their physical existence, but they had won something far more important. They had become the universe's permanent memory of what it meant to refuse erasure. Even when the last stars burned out and reality itself began to fade, the cosmos would remember the small, stubborn species that had insisted on being unforgettable. The final memory was eternal.